All right, let's go ahead and get started. So welcome. You are at our first official session of new International Student Orientation for our fall 2024-2025 year. Meet ISEO and know the rules. We know that some of you are already in San Diego, some of you might be in the midst of traveling, and some of you are just preparing to travel and arrive. So whatever group you might fall into, just a warm welcome. We're so excited to meet you. I know we have lots of in-person events coming up next week where we'll hope that we'll get the chance to meet you in person. And please do, if you see us, make sure that you come up and introduce yourself. We'd love to make that face-to-face connection. My name is Grace Fuller. I use she, her pronouns, and I get to serve as the Manager of International Experience and Engagement here at ISEO, the International Services and Engagement Office. And I have a few housekeeping reminders before we begin. So first off, you are in listen only mode, which means you can hopefully hear us, but unfortunately we can't hear you. So the main way that we're going to interact together today is actually through that Q&A feature on your Zoom menu bar. If you never used the Q&A feature before, you can go ahead and submit those questions. In general, they'll be anonymous, and then we can go ahead and answer those questions at large. Also, if for some reason we aren't able to get to your question today, you can always contact our office via icontact.ucsd.edu, and we'll make sure to get your question answered there. I see one of you have also raised your hand, and just as a similar reminder, we won't necessarily be utilizing that feature today. Really, the main way we'll be interacting with you is through that Q&A feature. We are recording as well, so you'll be able to view this webinar recording as well as all orientation webinar recordings at inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. Typically, we have that up on our website around a week after we have hosted the webinar, and that's a great resource to be able to go back and refer to. And finally, make sure that you stay until the end of the session where we'll have a survey. And by filling out the survey, you will be entered into our gift card giveaway. And many of our students receive gift cards from filling out that survey. So a friendly reminder to please go ahead and stay tuned for that at the end of the session. And with that, I'll hand it over to my colleague Lisa to introduce herself.
Hello and welcome. My name is Lisa Swid, and I am the Manager of Student Services at ISEO. I've been assisting international students here at UC San Diego for over 10 years, and I want to tell you that we are thrilled that you are here and are part of our campus community. International students make up around 20% of our student population, and so you are a huge part of what makes our campus so fun and so vibrant. I love welcoming new students to our campus and learning about your home country and ways that we can make this place feel a little bit more like home for you. Your home away from home. I myself studied abroad and lived abroad for many years, so I can certainly empathize with the feeling of being new, maybe slightly lost, maybe a little bit out of place. So just know that you have a wonderful support system at ISEO and UC San Diego that you can tap into whenever you need. So please do reach out, introduce yourself, attend the events, get connected early. It makes a huge difference just having friends and a support system. And there are so many programs that you can get involved with pretty much right when you land. So let's get into today's agenda. So today we will be talking about ISEO and your support system. We're going to look through your documents and make sure that you're familiar with what your immigration documents are. We will be going over some, just very generally, the F1 and J1 regulations and some resources, and then we'll talk about different ways for you to get involved. So ISEO, our goal is to help you succeed while you're here. Our job and our passion is truly helping you to succeed, helping you to reach your academic and personal goals. We have I think we have over 20 friendly advisors, administrative staff, and student assistants who are ready to help you during your time here at UC San Diego. We can advise you on understanding your immigration status, rules for working on and off campus, making sure that you have the proper work authorization, traveling, and how to adjust to your campus life and your classes while here. We also have programs. This is a great way for you to attend various events, get connected, and help you to have the best experience while you're here in San Diego. Now, ISEO is actually not the only office on campus that will help you during your time here. You might, sorry. So you might have noticed that this is a pretty large campus. If you have arrived to San Diego and you've taken a walk around campus, it is easy to get lost. And I'm not going to lie that I've been here for over 10 years and still I get lost. There are so many new buildings going up. So don't feel embarrassed or like it's normal to get lost on campus. If you are an undergraduate student, familiarize yourself with with the College Academic Advising Office. They are going to be a great resource for you. If you are a graduate student, you want to get connected to your graduate coordinator. They will be a great resource for you while you're here at UCSD. They'll help you to navigate making academic progress during your program. You can also rely on your professors in your classes and faculty in your department. And then lastly, just know that there's other offices on campus that can help you during your program. So sometimes asking one question such as, how can I find a summer internship? Answering that question you would benefit from getting the support from various resources on campus. So you would want to talk to our office to help you to understand the employment authorization piece as it relates to your immigration status. You might want to connect with your college advisor or your academic department advisor to understand how to enroll in an internship eligible course. And then you would also want to connect with the Career Services Center for tips on searching for internships, how to write a resume, how to practice your interview skills. So just know that sometimes what might seem like a very simple question could really benefit from using the support system of various offices, various units on campus. And then also note that each office might have different communication methods. So while our office, we have Zoom advising appointments and also walk-in advising hours, other units might be available through the virtual advising center or through email. So just be aware that not all hours and methods of communication will be the same through each office. Okay, so now let's move through, we're gonna get familiar with your documents. So if you have these documents handy, please go ahead and take them out. There are 4 documents that you want to be very familiar with while you're here as an F1 or J1 student. These are your immigration documents. So your passport, your visa page, which is inside of your passport, your Form I-20 if you are an F1 student, or your DS 2019 if you are a J1 student, and then your Form I-94. So your passport should be valid for at least 6 months into the future from the date of your arrival. I know that some of you have already arrived, you've successfully cleared the border, you've arrived to UC San Diego, and some of you are making some final preparations before your arrival. So make sure that your passport is valid for at least 6 months into the future, and this applies every time you depart and re-enter the United States. Your visa, you want to make sure that your visa is valid for entry. You can think of your visa similar to like a key, so you need it to enter. Once you're inside the United States, you don't necessarily need it for anything. It's really an entry document. So every time you depart the United States, you want to make sure that your visa is valid in order to re-enter. And then we want you to check your Form I-20 or DS 2019. Make sure that all the information there is correct. So make sure that the dates are correct. It would be a problem if your program start date showed September 2025, for example. Humans make errors sometimes, so just, you want to make sure that your immigration document shows the correct name, your date of birth, your country of citizenship, your dates of study, your major. So yeah, just make sure that all of that information is correct. And then once you arrive to the United States, you'll want to ensure that your I-94 was processed correctly at the port of entry. So you'll go online and you will print out an electronic form I-94. Sometimes the document might be processed incorrectly when you enter the United States. Perhaps you're a J1 student and they marked you as a an F1, or perhaps they put a date like valid until, and they actually put a date when it should say DS. So go to our website and you'll be able to see just information to make sure that the I-94 was processed correctly at your port of entry. So just a few reminders about your documents. Now the immigration documents are super important. We want you to make sure that you will be using them throughout your program to apply for work authorization, if you plan to apply for a driver's license, open a bank account, if you end up applying for a social security number, and various other benefits. So just know that these documents you will be using throughout your program at UC San Diego. So don't discard or don't throw your documents away. You want to keep copies of your forms and every institution that you attend in the United States, since you never really know when you might need them. And make sure to keep your documents valid and up to date. Keep them in a safe place. And we also recommend taking photos of your documents and at least keeping digital copies on your phone, just in case you lose them. And every time, we want you to do a document self-check every time that you depart and re-enter the United States. So if you go to iselfcheck.ucsd.edu, you'll see a thorough guide on how to understand your document, making sure to keep it valid and up to date. Okay, so now that you're familiar with your immigration documents, there are a few steps that you will want to take once you've arrived to campus. So you do not need to physically check in with our office. We want you to come to all of the super fun and engaging events that we have planned for you, but you don't need to like check in. Once you arrive to the United States, the next step is you need to print your electronic form I-94. This is your arrival record. And then the next step is you will log into Triton Link. You will update your US address, and then you will submit the check-in form in iPortal. So the same place that you submitted your request for your I-20 or DS-2019, you will submit this other form. It's called the check-in form. And this is what tells us that you have successfully arrived to the United States. It will ask you to upload a copy of your electronic form I-94, and then we will register your SEVIS record, that basically activating your F1 or J1 status. It is because we will be registering thousands of records at the start of the year. Just know that your check-in form will likely be processed after the due date that's listed in iPortal, but that do not be alarmed. It's very normal. We will register almost all of the records within the first 2 to 3 weeks of the quarter. If there are any questions about your check-in form, an advisor will reach out to you. So there's no need to follow up with our office about your check-in form. Once you submit it, you're good. We will activate your record. If there's any issues, an advisor will follow up with you directly. And then the final step is to start your program. So just follow those steps for checking in, arrival, printing out your electronic form I-94, updating your address in Triton Link, submitting your check-in form, and then you are ready to start your program. Okay, moving on to knowing the rules. So you will hear us say, or you'll see a lot in our communication, how to maintain your status. So what does maintaining your status actually mean? So basically it means holding an active SEVIS record, right? So you have valid F1 or J1 status. So when you enter the United States in F1 or J1 status, the purpose of this particular visa status is to be a student. And the way that the federal regulations define student is that you are a full-time student. So the expectation when you enter the United States in F1 or J1 student status is that you will be enrolling full-time. So for UC San Diego, that means 12 units. Another way to maintain your status is that you will make sure to update your I-20 or DS-2019 anytime the information on there changes. So if you change your name, if you change your major, if you decide to have a second major, any of that information on your DS-2019 or I-20, if any of it changes, make sure that you submit an updated I-20 request to our office so that we can update it and see this for you. The other thing is maintaining academic standing and integrity. So you're making proper progress in your degree requirements. You'll be following federal rules and regulations and obtaining work authorization if you plan to work off campus or on campus. So I know this is very broad and very general, but what we ask of you is to complete the iTriton online training. This is something that is mandatory. This is what will give you all of the information that you need to know what it means to maintain your F1 or J1 status. This is a self-paced comprehensive program that was created by our office. And this is to help you to navigate the various rules and regulations of the F1 or J1 status. There's also a ton of tips and different guidance on how to settle into life at UCSD and how to find some community. So some of you have probably already completed this, which is great. It is due by the start of your program. So if you have not started it yet, please do so today if you can. We require, again, this is mandatory. We do require that all students complete these modules, and it helps you to succeed while you're here. It answers some of the most common questions that we see from students. And the great part about it, the great thing about it is that you can access it as many times as you need throughout your time as a student. So for example, you review the information, and then maybe in a few months you think, oh, what was that? What do I need to do as an international student to work off campus? So you can go back and you can review the working in the US section, or perhaps something, maybe you're not able to enroll full-time for a quarter. So you can go back and learn about how to go below 12 units and get the proper authorization to do that. So iTriton is a great resource to help you guide through some of the questions that you will likely have. Yeah, this was due by September 1st or by the arrival to the United States, whichever is earlier. So go ahead and get started on that now if you have not done so already. Okay, so I think that covers most of the content. So I'm going to pass it over to Grace to see if to cover some of the engagement sessions that we have.
Yes, we've had a lot of good questions already. I've been able to answer some of them while Lisa was presenting, but I think there are some that would be helpful to read out loud for the benefit of the group. So we have lots of questions about the I-94. Let's tackle some of those first. One question here, Lisa, is do students have to have the I-94 printed out before they enter the US, or is this something they do after they arrive?
So you wanted to print out the I-94 after you arrive. So it's an arrival departure form. So it's not possible to print it out before you arrive. It is a document that shows that you have arrived to the United States, and it shows which status you're entering in. So if you have a form I-20 and you applied for the F1 visa, when you enter the United States, you're entering as an F1 international student by showing your form I-20, your passport, and your valid visa. When you print out the I-94, you want to make sure that your documents were processed correctly at the port of entry. So your I-94 should reflect that you are an F1 student. So you're really looking to confirm that your documents were processed correctly at the port of entry. That's really what the I-94 is.
Mm-hmm. And as a follow-up question, a student asked, do we need to physically print out the I-9 form, or is an electronic copy of this okay for check-in purposes?
Yeah, the electronic copy is great for check-in purposes. So when you submit the iPortal check-in form, it's going to ask you to upload a copy of the I-94. Some of us are old school. We like printing and having paper documents, but having an electronic form is completely great. That works fine.
If you make sure to just save that electronic copy as like a PDF. And I recommend for students always to have maybe like a folder on your laptop that has all the electronic copies of your immigration documents. So just like Lisa mentioned, even if you don't have a physical copy of all of your immigration documents, having an electronic copy that's saved that you can easily access will be really helpful for your time here at UC San Diego. We have a few questions about where students can actually physically print the Form I-9 form. So again, as a reminder, for the purposes of the check-in form, you don't actually need to physically print it. You can just save it as a PDF and use that to upload to iPortal. However, if you are interested in physically printing any type of document here on campus, oftentimes students can print it at the library and various places around campus. So feel free to ask your academic advisor or things like that. But I would recommend the library is a great place to start. Okay, we see another question of will I-94 be required at the time of entry for freshmen? So remember, the I-94 is automatically generated because it is your arrival and departure record. So it will automatically be updated every time you arrive or depart from the US. And I did put a link in the chat of how you can access the I-9 form and more information about that as well. So hopefully that answers a lot of questions. This is probably good for the group. Lisa, do students need to check in every time they come back to the US?
They want to do the document self-check every time you come back to the United States. And every time you depart too. So be very familiar with your immigration documents. So making sure again that your passport is valid for 6 months into the future from your date of arrival, making sure you have a valid form I-20 or DS-2019, making sure that your visa is valid. And then again, looking at the I-94 and making sure that it was processed correctly at the port of entry. So yeah, you're doing a document self-check. So you don't necessarily need to check in with so you don't need to come to our front desk and meet with an advisor to check in. You simply just want to do the document self-check, just making sure that your immigration documents are valid, that they're correct, verifying that the information is up to date and that the I-94 was processed correctly at the port of entry.
Mhm. Lisa, I see there's another question here that you've marked that you'd like to answer live. Do you want to speak to that?
Yes, let me find it there. Do you want to read it out loud?
Yeah.
Is it the
So the student,
check-in?
yes, I already did the check-in, but didn't receive an email confirmation about completion. The I-94 shows up as pending approval. Will I get an email confirmation that my check-in has been completed?
So yeah, so the check-in forms will be completed probably like the third or the fourth week of the quarter. So even though the due date is in the past, there is no need to be concerned. An advisor will follow up with you if there's any issue with the form that you submitted, but we cannot actually activate or register your record until after the quarter begins. So the quarter begins September 23rd, and the records will be activated no more than 30 days after the program start date. So there's no reason to be concerned if your check-in form is completed after its due date. This is completely normal. We really just want you to submit the form so that we can review it and register your record. When you submit the check-in form, it's basically telling us that you've arrived to the United States. In order for us to activate or register your CVIS record to confirm that you have arrived, we need that check-in form that says, yes, I'm in the United States. I am beginning my studies. I am full-time enrolled. Then we can go to CVIS and activate your record, but we cannot do that until after the start of the quarter. Yeah, just if you don't receive any update, let's say by the beginning of October, then feel free to follow up with us. But we do need we need the few weeks after the start of the quarter to register the record.
And a related question, the student asks, what if I forgot and I submitted my check-in 13 days after entering the US?
We'll still be able to process it. That's not a problem. Again, the quarter has not begun yet. So we'll be registering all of the check-in, we'll be registering your records and processing all of the check-in forms after the start of the quarter, a few weeks after the quarter starts. So not a problem.
Mhm.
Thank you for submitting it.
Okay. I see a few questions about, well, actually, let's answer this question. Do transfer students who remain in the US during the summer also need to check in for their I-20?
Yes, please do. Please do submit the checking form.
Mhm. Um, uh, okay, I see some questions about updating address. So this question asks, do we update our address to that of UCSD or specifically to our college dorm?
Good question. I'm not, I mean, should be your physical address. So the
Mhm.
college dorm, which is within UCSD. So I would check with your RA perhaps to find out, what is your mailing address? What is your, like, where do people send mail?
Exactly. To echo Lisa, typically recommend to use your mailing address. Um, is the way that we um uh, yes. So again, to update Triton link, you're going to use your mailing address. So whether that's iHouse or whether that's another college dorm, whatever your mailing address is. A related question, if I haven't gotten a permanent accommodation yet, should I still update for my temporary residence?
Yeah, so you would want to update it, and then if you move again, you would update it within 10 days of that change. So every time you move, you will be updating your address.
Mhm. All right, we got a question about program end dates. So my F1 visa expiration date is November 2025. Does this mean I have to request to renew my F1 before November, or should I wait until it expires to renew it? Yeah, it's visa.
So the F1, so I'm not
Sorry.
sure if you mean F1 as in your I-20, or do you, well, I'm guessing you mean your visa, the
Yeah, now that
visa in
I'm
your passport.
reading it, I think it's referring to the F1 visa versus the
Okay.
program end date.
Yeah, so if you're going to be traveling home before that date, we would recommend renewing it so that you don't need to have a valid visa to be inside the United States. You need the visa to be valid in order to re-enter the United States. So if you have no plan, if you don't have any plans to travel, let's say you're going to be inside the United States through December of 2026, you're just going to be in California, you're not traveling at all, it's okay for the visa to expire. However, if you're planning to travel in the spring of 2025, for example, let's say, or in the summer of 2025, even though the expiration of your visa is in the future, we would recommend renewing it if you plan to travel, depart, and re-enter. So yeah, so we would recommend that you renew it before November if you're going to be in your home country before then.
Wonderful. We have another question here. Is it okay to enter the US after 30 days past the program start date printed on the I-20 form?
I would recommend maybe making an appointment with an advisor to discuss your circumstances. We would be concerned about you entering, 4 weeks after the program start date, because the quarter system goes very fast. So it's only 10 weeks. So if that means that you're missing 4 weeks of class, you might want to consider. I mean, I don't know exactly what your specific circumstances are, so I would recommend talking to an advisor. You are able to enter the United States 30 days before the program start date on your I-20. And we would hope that you can begin your classes, when the start of this instruction begins. But if you have a certain situation where you're not able to enter for a few weeks, we would recommend connecting with your professors to see how can you stay on top of your coursework. Is there a circumstance where you might want to consider deferring if that's an option? It's not always an option sometimes. So that would be a discussion to have with your department. Can you start a quarter later perhaps, or a year later? So it kind of just depends. It's a bit of a complicated question. We would recommend trying to enter by the start date of your classes if possible, but speak with an advisor if you have something else going on, so that we can best advise you on your specific case.
So we have a few questions about One, if the I-94 and the check-in process are the same. And two, once the check-in process is completed, what should they do next?
For the I-94 is, so when you enter the United States, let's say you enter at LAX airport. Let's say that's your first arrival to the United States. When you go through the Customs and Border Patrol, they're going to look at your passport and your visa, and then the I-94 is electronically generated. You want to go online and make sure that you have, and then print your electronic I-94. It will show when you arrived and where you entered. So if you entered at LAX, it will show, date of entry, September 9th, LAX. It will say something like that. So that's your I-94. That is once you have the PDF of your I-94, you will use that to submit your check-in form with our office. So our office is responsible for maintaining your SEVIS record, which is our way of informing basically the government that you are maintaining your F1 or J1 status. So when you enter the United States with that valid F1 or J1 visa, you're entering to be a student. And then we will take that I-94. We will be able to see that you've enrolled full-time at our institution. And we can say, the student has arrived, they are maintaining status, they are eligible for work authorization. We process various documents to support your stay as a student in the United States. So the I-94 and the check-in form are two separate processes, but they're connected. So you need the I-94 to submit your check-in form. The I-94 is what shows that you have entered the United States, and the check-in form is what informs our office that you have successfully arrived to the United States, and we verify that you are enrolled and that you are maintaining your status in order for us to activate your SEVIS record. So you want to have a valid, active SEVIS record when you apply for work authorization, for example. If you depart the United States and come back in, perhaps you want to go on a nice vacation to Mexico one weekend. I don't know. If you depart the United States, or you're going to Canada, or you're returning back home, if you depart and re-enter and we have not activated your SEVIS record, if you have not submitted the check-in form, you will have issues the next time you enter the United States, because the officer at the port of entry will say, oh, your SEVIS record is not valid. So it's very important that you submit the check-in form so that we can activate the record. This will set you up for success for the future.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lisa. Okay. I'm trying to see if there's some other themes. I do realize that some folks are having issues registering for tomorrow's session working in the US. If you are encountering issues, please go ahead and email iprograms@ucsd.edu, and we'll go ahead and assist you personally with that registration. So again, I just put that in the chat. But if you are having any issues, go ahead and email and we will get you all set up. All right, we have a question about reaching out to graduate advisors. So is it recommended that we reach out to our grad advisor ourselves?
Usually there's a grad coordinator of the department who can help you navigate how best to communicate with those in your department. Yeah, I would recommend checking with your grad coordinator, and then maybe checking in with, if there's like welcome programs, checking in with current students, just to kind of get a sense of how people communicate in your specific department. But yeah, I think you can certainly reach out to your grad advisor yourself. But each department kind of has its own culture and ways of communicating. So get familiar with how your department functions, I would recommend. I don't know, Grace, if you have anything to add. I'm kind of.
Yes, I would say each department does sometimes function a little bit differently. So you will probably need to reach out to your department, and typically your graduate program coordinator is a great place to start. If you need help kind of finding who that person is, we might be able to help you with that. But in general, yes, grad students do reach out to their grad departments themselves. All right, I'm seeing some questions about accessing the recording, so I'm just going to go ahead and put this in the chat again. So the recording of this webinar and all orientation webinars will be uploaded to inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu in about a week's time. So just know that in about a week, you should be able to access this. And actually, while we're gonna still answer some questions, but I am going to go through some other opportunities. I'm going to give Lisa a chance to read through the questions to see if there's any common themes we should address. And while she's doing that, I'm going to share about some opportunities to get involved and allow you all to fill out the survey. But don't worry, we'll still answer questions. Like we mentioned, we have lots of events where we're really excited to meet you in person. So starting next week, we have Global Coffee Hour. Typically, we have Global Coffee Hour once a month during the academic year, but for orientation, we offer it 3 times during 1 week. So starting on Monday, September 16th from 10 to 11, Wednesday, the 18th from 10 to 11, and then Friday, the 20th from 8 to 9. We'll be offering coffee and pastries and look forward to meeting you in person. This will be in our dance hall, our 409 dance hall. And if you have any curiosities about finding our event locations, I am going to put a link in the chat of how you can best access those. All right. We also have interest groups. Interest groups and meetups are hosted for students by students. So this is an opportunity to find students who share similar interests as you. All of those are being added to our iEvents calendar, ievents.ucsd.edu, so you can kind of see what interest groups are available and if there are some that you're interested in attending. Okay, some other orientation events. So we have a UC San Diego bus tour where we do a tour of common spots in San Diego to help make San Diego feel like your new home away from home. I believe this may or may not be sold out. So hopefully you've been able to grab a ticket, but if not, we'll try to offer more of those throughout the year. We also have our International Student Fan Fest coming up on Thursday, September 19th. This is our collaboration with athletics where we have like a mixer before the game where you actually get to play some games yourself, interact with some of the coaches and the athletes, and then you'll get to go to the game together. UC San Diego is a D1 university, so we compete at the highest level of athletics, and we're excited to welcome you into our Triton Pride. And then on Wednesday, September 25th, we have our international mixer. So our international mixer is where we really bring together our entire global community. So incoming students, returning students, international students. We also invite our domestic students to attend, and it's really like a kickoff to the academic year. So as a reminder, you can sign up for all of these events via ievents.ucsd.edu. A few more specifics. So we have our International Graduate Student Social coming up on September 17th from 5 to 7. So if you're an international grad student or you participated in our Grad Pals program, we highly recommend you attend. And if you are an undergrad student and you participated in our Global Ambassador program, that's a mentorship program for our undergrads, we'd love for you to come to our Gap Mixer on Thursday, September 26th. Like I said, our iEvents calendar is where you can basically sign up for all of our events. So I'll go ahead and type this into the chat, but ievents.ucsd.edu is a one-stop shop for you to learn more about these different events and then register accordingly. I will make a reminder that for the purposes of orientation, our registration form does function as an interest form. So do make sure you come early to the events because we do admit folks on a first come, first served basis. Okay, so here is the survey I referenced. Please go ahead and take a minute now to scan the QR code on your phone. And go ahead and fill out the survey to be entered into our gift card giveaway. And while you are filling out the survey, we're going to go ahead and take some time to answer a few more questions. So Lisa, were there any themes or questions that you would like to address?
Yeah, so I saw some questions about asking if it's possible to activate the CVIS record earlier for things like wanting to apply for like a real ID or a driver's license. So just a reminder that we are not able to activate the CVIS record until after the quarter begins. So the start date of your program on your I-20, unless you're here, unless you started in a summer program. So if you did begin your studies in the summer, we would be able to activate the CVIS record earlier. So I would recommend either coming to walk-up appointments, that's just dropping in. That's Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays, and Fridays from 2:30 to 4. Or you can send us a message through our iContact form, or you can visit us on the iPortal tech support, which is every day in the morning. So if your program start date has already passed, we would be able to activate your CVIS record earlier. If your program start date is not until September 23rd, we're not able to activate it before that start date. So I know you want to get moving with applying for various documents, but again, we're not able to activate the CVIS record until after the program start date on your I-20. I also saw questions about, so I know that we briefly covered full-time, the requirement that you are enrolled full-time. So there was a question that if you're currently enrolled in less than 12 units at the moment, because you're on a wait list, will you be denied entry into the United States if you don't show full-time enrollment? So as long as you have your valid immigration documents, so your passport, your visa, your I-20 or DS 2019, you should be okay to enter the United States in F1 or J1 status. The immigration officers should not have access to your academic information. So that is really what our role is. Our role is to activate your CVIS record after we're able to confirm that you've entered the United States and are enrolled full-time. So you should not be denied entry if you are not enrolled in 12 units at your time of entering the United States. And then I saw some questions also about the program end date on your I-20 or DS 2019. So typically we will issue documents with an extra year, kind of as a buffer, because it's much easier to shorten a record than it is to extend it. So even though your program might only be 2 years, your document was likely issued for 3 years. So just know that's very normal. If you notice that your program end date is not correct, like if your program is 2 years long and maybe your document was only issued for 1 year, please submit the extension or contact our office and let an advisor review your document. Sometimes mistakes happen. So if it was supposed to be processed for 2 years and it was only issued for 1 year, we'll go ahead and correct that for you. So make sure that you contact our office or submit the extension form. And Grace, I saw that there's a few questions that you marked as wanting to answer live. Is that okay if I turn it over to you to answer some of those questions?
Yes. So just as a reminder, the difference between checking in for CVIS activation and document self-check. So you only need to activate your CVIS record once. Essentially, once you check in for activation, we will activate that record and your record will be active. So that should only happen once. However, you should complete the document self-check. And again, I'll put this link in the chat. I self-check. The document self-check you should complete every time you leave and enter the US. And the purpose of the document self-check is just making sure that all of your immigration documents are correct and up to date. So to confirm, you only complete the check-in for activation, CVIS activation once. You complete the document self-check every time you enter and leave the US. Yes, please log in to iPortal to update the I-20 for any purposes, any changes. Again, that's iportal.ucsd.edu. There is a tour of San Diego, but yes, if you are interested in a UC San Diego campus tour, you can actually admissions host all of our campus tours, but a lot of students will attend these tours as they're a new student. So that is a very common thing to do, and I'll put a link in the chat where you can sign up for a tour of our campus because it is very, very large. I am getting some questions about if folks can bring plus ones to the bus tour. Unfortunately, because of really limited spots, we are not allowing students to bring any additional like friends or family members because it's a very popular event. It does sell out. And so for the purposes of this bus tour, where you have to be a registered student to attend. Lisa, I see that you have a question you'd like to answer.
Yes, somebody asked, how do you know if your CVIS record has been activated? So you will receive an update to your iPortal request for the check-in form once it's been processed. Once the check-in form has been, it'll say complete, no document issued, then you'll receive some information in your iPortal request that it's been successfully activated.
All right. I see a question about how to update the I-20 if a student changes majors. Lisa, are you able to speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. So you would go to iportal.ucsd.edu and submit the updated I-20 request. So anytime there's a change to your I-20, whether it's your major or your name, for example, you do want to submit the updated I-20 request. So you would just simply go to iportal.ucsd.edu. This is where you submitted your request for your I-20 or DS-2019, and you would click on services, and then find the request type that's updated I-20 request. It will take you through a series of questions so that you can request an updated I-20.
Okay, I see a couple questions regarding how long is the time for customs? What papers do I need to bring for customs? What documents should I bring for, customs at the airport? Can you maybe speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so they'll be checking your immigration documents. So they're going to be checking your passport, making sure that it's valid for 6 months into the future at the very least. They'll be checking the visa that's inside of your passport, making sure that that is valid. And then they'll also check your I-20. So they'll be taking a look at your program start date and making sure that you're entering when you're eligible to enter, so 30 days before the program start date on your I-20, unless you're a transfer student or a change of level, then you can enter between the two programs that you were enrolled in. So yeah, your passport, your visa, and your I-20 or DS-2019. Those are the 3 documents that they will be checking at the port of entry. If they have any questions, if you don't have a valid document, then sometimes students might be sent to secondary inspection, which is basically, they'll sometimes contact our office to see if we can confirm that you're entering as a student. Sometimes you might be issued an I-515. This is basically you're allowed to enter for 30 days and you have like this window to update your documents. It doesn't happen frequently because most students do enter with their valid documents, but if for some reason you don't have the document with you, you might be sent to secondary, you might be issued the I-515, or worst case scenario, you're not allowed entry into the United States. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully you have all of your proper documents and in order, and you enter seamlessly and begin your program of study for the fall quarter.
All right, I see a couple questions regarding if I got a visa for a single entry only, not multiple, then what should I do to renew my visa?
That would be a question for the embassy or the consulate that you applied for your visa at. Every consulate or embassy might, depending on which country you're in, might process visas differently. So I would recommend next time you're in your home country to check with the consulate and see if it's possible for you to get the multiple entry visa.
All right, I see one question here that says there are a few classes that are offered remotely at UCSD. Is there a limit on the number of remote classes that international students can take?
I would recommend checking in with an advisor about your academic plans. When you enter the United States, it is now with the assumption that you will be pursuing your degree program in person. So the majority of classes at UC San Diego, I think they're all for the most part in person. So check in with an advisor about what your plans are. I don't know that there's a maximum number that you could enroll in. That might be a question for your academic advisor, perhaps. But the expectation is that you are pursuing your program in person at this time.
Yeah, for the majority of your 12 units should be in-person units. So confirm those plans for sure. Um, uh, Lisa, there's a question of if a student is delayed in arriving to the US and cannot attend orientation due to renewing their visa, what should they do?
Uh, so I'm not sure if you mean orientation with your college or orientation with us. So I would recommend if you're missing orientation for your college, definitely connect with them and let them know that you're delayed. If you are delayed for because you don't have a valid visa to enter the country, our office and your academic advisor will certainly do what we can to support you so that you can enter once the visa is issued, hopefully not too late. Making sure that you connect with your professors if you're missing any of your coursework. But yeah, I would check with your college to see if they can offer any information remotely if you're not able to enter in time for the orientation sessions. For our purposes, the iTriton online training that is virtual. So that is something that you should be able to complete regardless if you're inside the United States or not. But yeah, if your entry is delayed, definitely connect with your academic advisor and with our office to see if we can support you. Yeah. So just reach out.
Mhm. We have a few questions about transfers, CVIS transfers. So I transferred my CVIS from another school to UC San Diego. So what is the check-in deadline for me in that case?
So yeah, please submit the check-in form before the fall quarter begins. I understand you're still inside. It sounds like you've transferred your record, so you might not have departed and re-entered. So just go ahead and submit it before the start of fall quarter.
Uh, and then a follow-up question to that. So this student sounds like maybe they've departed. So this is a CVIS transfer to re-enter the US. Do we need to renew our visa so that our I-20 says UC San Diego, or just transferring the CVIS record is enough to re-enter the US?
So once you ask your previous institution to transfer your CVIS record to UCSD, that's part of the transfer process. You still need to request the transfer I-20 from us. So make sure that you still have a valid I-20. It will show transfer pending. And your I-20 should show UC San Diego and have your valid program dates. So just make sure that you do sometimes we've had students who request that the previous school transfer the CVIS record, but then they don't request the I-20 from us. So just make sure that you do have a UC San Diego transfer I-20 to re-enter. The visa, if it's still valid, even if it shows your previous school, you should be able to use it for re-entry. Sometimes officers at the port of entry might be new, maybe they're going through training. So it's possible that they might have questions because your I-20 is not matching your visa. So to be on the super safe side, it's not a bad idea to renew the visa if it's possible. But I understand that sometimes visa wait times can be a problem. Sometimes renewing the visa is so that the name of the school on your visa matches your I-20. It might not be possible. So it should be okay to re-enter with the visa of your previous school. But if you want to be super, super safe and avoid questions at the port of entry, if it's possible, go ahead and renew the visa. I know that was kind of a long-winded question. It wasn't straightforward. And that is the nature sometimes of answering immigration regulation questions. Sometimes there's a bit of gray area. It's not always a clear and straightforward answer. So again, you should be able to enter if your visa is valid. However, if you're an officer at the port of entry and you notice that the I-20 does not match the name on the visa, and if you're new to the field, for example, it might raise questions. So yeah, always know that the entry into the United States is up to the discretion of the officer at the port of entry. So we can make recommendations, but ultimately the officer at the port of entry is going to be the one who allows or denies you entry.
All right, I do see a few questions about like social security numbers and how to get social security numbers. As a reminder, you do need a job offer and thus a job offer letter to apply for a social security number. But I did put a link in the chat that reiterates that point and includes additional information about how essentially to apply for a social security number. So please go ahead and refer to that for more information. Lisa, there's another question here that says, if I put the incorrect last date of entry while filling out the check-in form, what can I do to fix it?
You can go to the iPortal technical support hours. Those are offered Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday from 9 to 9 to 11. Apologize. Just go ahead and log in. It's a Zoom link. I'll put a link in our chat. But those are very quick questions that our intake team would be able to, they can set your application to incomplete, you can adjust it and then resubmit your application. So go ahead and visit our iPortal tech support hours. I see another question about the check-in form. How long will it take for the check-in I-20 activation status to change? It seems the status seems to be in preliminary approval for quite a time. So yes, that it will be in preliminary approval for the next few weeks because we are not able to activate the CVIS record until the quarter begins. So it will change a few weeks after September 23rd. So you can expect an update to your check-in form sometime in October. So don't be alarmed if the due date has passed. It will be in preliminary approval for the next few weeks. That is completely normal.
We have a question here of, does a student need to reapply for a visa every year, or do they need to request a new form I-20 every year? Can you provide
So as long as you're maintaining your status, so you're maintaining full-time enrollment, your I-20 should remain active. So you shouldn't, you want to look at the expiration date of your visa. So if your visa has expired and you're inside the United States, as long as you're maintaining your F1 or J1 status, that's not a problem. It's okay that your visa expires. However, if you depart the United States and you want to come back in, then you would need to renew it. So I'm not sure how your visa was processed. If it was only processed for 1 year and you have plans to travel, then yes, you would need to renew it each time you depart to make sure that it's valid for re-entry. But a lot of students' visa will typically be valid for 4 or 5 years, in which case you do not need to renew it each year.
Okay. So unfortunately, that is all the time we have for questions today. We've answered as many questions as we have been able to, and we've tried to answer questions that would benefit a large group of students. But remember, if for any reason you have follow-up questions or we didn't get to answer your question today, you can still reach out to our office via icontact.ucsd.edu. Um, and I'm actually going to pull up that on the screen here because there's a few different ways to get into contact with our office. So this is icontact.ucsd.edu. Now, many of you have kind of like put in specific questions regarding your specific case or scenario. You can always email those inquiries to us and you would click student advising because you are a student. If you would like to meet with an ISEO advisor via Zoom, you can also find out more about student advising here. If you're hoping to meet with an advisor in person, you can attend our walk-up advising. You can find more information here. Front desk is when this is open for document pickup and check-in. And you can also kind of identify where we are on campus using UCSD Maps or Google Maps. Tech support with iPortal that Lisa mentioned is accessible here. And we do have an emergency phone contact if for some reason, let's say you're delayed at a port of entry, etc. So all within, and also we have some assistance again, finding our physical location here on campus, parking directions, how to get here, taking the shuttle or public transit, etc. So all of this information can be found at icontact.ucsd.edu. We did try our best to answer, like I said, as many questions as we could, but unfortunately, there are many questions and only just a couple of us. So there will be more orientation sessions this week as well as next week, as well as we are still offering advising. So lots of different opportunities to connect with our office. We hope that this session was helpful for you, and we look forward to either seeing you at some more virtual sessions and meeting you in person at some events. All right. Take care, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.